Hello, everyone. It is such a pleasure to be here. I want to welcome you all to Project Healthy Minds World Mental Health Day Festival. I want to say up front that Dr. Becky is coming. We have been waiting for her to get here. She will be here shortly. It will be an exciting surprise moment when she does finally join us. We believe her car is somewhere in Brooklyn. I think somebody is following her on a map. I assume it says Dr. Becky, and they're just watching the dot move around. But she's coming. So everyone, yeah.
Did we hear the helicopter land on the roof?
Yes, I think probably, yeah. And then she'll rappel down from the ceiling, yeah. And so we're just going to get started talking about parenting and comedy because, and mental health, because I think they're remarkably interwoven topics. But I want to start just by asking you guys, I'm a parent. I have an 11 and 8-year-old daughter. How old are your kids? How long have you been on this journey?
Okay. I'm Rosebud, obviously not Michael. But my kid is 2 years old. I have one child, and she just turned 2 last week.
Great.
Hi, I'm Michael. I made the joke about Dr. Becky's helicopter landing on the roof earlier. I have a 5 and a 2-year-old, both girls.
Both girls.
Yes.
Okay, so all girls so far. Interesting. Yeah. All right. Okay. How do you talk about parenting in your stand-up, in your work? Like, how does parenting show up in the kinds of jokes that you do, and also in whether your comedian persona has changed since you became a parent?
Mm-hmm. Wow, so nice of you, Michael.
I don't know. Do you want me to go, or
No, I'll do it.
All right.
Yeah. Well, I just shot a special for Netflix that came out earlier this year that was basically shot over a period of 2 years. The first half of it was shot while I was 8 months pregnant, and the second half of it was shot 1 year after having my kid. And part of that was influenced by my own fears and anxieties around postpartum and around what I was giving up by becoming a parent, and just curiosity around that whole life change. So I would say that it really influenced everything about that special. And I don't know that it has changed my comedic persona much. I think I'm still a pretty dark comic. And I mean, postpartum is not a light subject, so I think that was probably why I was so interested in it. But yeah.
Rosebud special is excellent, by the
So
way.
good.
Everyone
It's
should watch
fantastic.
it. It is
Yes.
fun watching.
Thanks. I'll Venmo both of you after.
This is going to sound weird. It is fun watching you be both pregnant and not pregnant on stage, and I've never said that sentence before in my life. I always hated when comics talked about their kids. That was my least favorite topic.
Interesting.
And I said, "Oh God, here they go talking about their kids." And then I had kids, and I said, "I don't know what else to talk about." So you can only write what you experience and live. And my current stand-up show has a lot of material about my kids. I try to be very diligent and make sure people who don't have kids will find it entertaining. I believe they do. That's my job. But I don't know how to not talk about it. I can only talk about me, and that this is who I am right now.
Yeah. Why do you think you did not like comedy about parenting before?
I always thought parents had given up on their dreams.
Same.
And that's a lesson for all of us.
Same.
Yeah, same.
Exactly, yeah.
And now I know that to be true. No, now I just know actually they're living a fuller, more rewarding life, and hopefully they still have the energy and resilience to pursue their dreams.
Yeah.
Is there a sense that some kinds of parenting comedy is hacky? Are there jokes about being a parent that feel like they are boring, or like topics that you feel like are uninteresting to explore? And I ask partly because part of the mental health piece of it, I think, is this sense of stigma, which often comes from hiding things, right? And hackiness is the opposite. It is this sense of like everyone knows this thing. And so it's really interesting to me to think about what kinds of comedy about parenting is like everyone knows? And where are the spaces that are sort of, actually no one's talking about this?
I think it's, for me, whenever I get into like kids say the darndest things territory, that's when I go like, ugh. But when you talk about the intricacies and the complexities of parenting and the feelings around it as a parent, then I start to get more interested. And I think that's interesting both to people who have kids and to people who don't, who might be either curious about becoming a parent or just want reassurance that they made the right choice not to. You know, you can provide something for everyone if you're speaking to your experience, just as a human. You know.
I worked with a comic when I was first starting who told me one way to help your comedy is to write down every time in your life that you laugh. And it's a very interesting exercise for anybody to do. One, it tells you a lot about what your sense of humor is. But also, when we truly laugh in life, we've connected with something. There's something there. We forget about our troubles for a second. It feels wonderful. So I try to speak about my kids when they've truly made me laugh. And it does seem to connect with the rest of the people. And at some times, I guess you could say it's a little bit hacky, but that's never slowed me down before.
I don't think so. I want to take a moment now and welcome Dr. Becky, who has
Dr. Becky
joined us.
Hi.
Hello. We're so thrilled you could join us. There's truly no more parenting story than, oh God, I am late to a thing. I think that is probably truly the most universal experience that we could all have.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you the question that I asked Rosebud and Michael to start, which was just how old are you? How many kids do you have, and how old are they?
So I have 3 kids, 8, 10, and 13.
Okay, so they are the parents of kindergarten and toddlers. I have an 11 and an 8-year-old. If people out there are really fully into the teen years and want to laugh at us from where we are not yet, you're more than welcome to do that. So I wanted to ask you about the role of humor in talking about parenting, because I think it is something that is kind of my instinct, certainly, when you're like, this is an absurd thing that is happening to me. But you are also trying to wrestle with the really intense reality of like, oh my God, this is a human life that I'm responsible for shepherding into the world. Where is humor helpful when you're trying to like connect with other people about this topic? And where does it feel like, are there places that are sort of so serious that you can't go?
You mean on stage, or you mean on stage?
Well, and for an audience, right? Because Dr. Becky, of course, is talking to, on a podcast or to a whole crowd of people. Yeah.
Dr. Becky? Rosebud?
Humor?
Yeah, I think humor is important, whether you're parenting your kids, you're talking about parenting. I actually think humor has a very powerful it's kind of a powerful factor in our learning in general. Like if you think back to a college class you were in or high school, the people we learn best from, especially if the topic is heavy, is someone who can kind of alternate something heavy with something that has a little levity. And I actually think there's something in the laughter, especially when it's joint laughter. Laughing with someone is very different than laughing at them, right? But laughing with another parent, like I know you ask your kid to go get their socks and they're naked eating a popsicle on the floor. Whether that happened or not, all of us who have toddlers or did were like, that basically happens to me all the time. And through that laughter, you kind of feel like this person gets it. They get the scene. They get the total absurdity. I'm trying to stay calm when my kid was supposedly getting socks and instead at 8 a.m. is naked eating a popsicle. Like, who could do that? And I think that joint experience allows in the learning process enough trust in someone to feel like they get where you're coming from to then maybe take in a piece of guidance or see a reframe. And so to me, anything that's hard, serious learning can really go hand in hand with something that has a little levity and humor.
You go.
My 5-year-old was pushing her scooter, and then running to the scooter, and then pushing the scooter, and then running to the scooter. And the scooter was pushed into the street. And my wife and I said, don't run into the street after your scooter. And she said, why? And we said, because we can replace the scooter, but we can't replace you. And the 5-year-old said, well, you could just make a new baby and give it my name. And my wife and I laughed, and I was like, holy shit, how do you even argue with that? But also, talk about humor, my wife and I bonded over that. We laughed together about that, and that was something where I think we enjoyed parenting for a second, even though we're like, don't run in the street. And that makes us happier, more bonded couple, which I think makes us maybe, hopefully, more present and better parents.
I just recently had, my mother-in-law came into town for my daughter's 2nd birthday. And I don't know if this is like being printed anywhere, but this part's off the record. My mother-in-law, I have a tough time with my mother-in-law, which, and my daughter hasn't seen her since she was 10 months old, and walked up to her grandma and turned to me and went, I don't like Grandma Nita. And I wanted to be like, me either, you know what I mean? But obviously I couldn't say that, you know, but she's only 2, and I started to notice, like, she can be a little bit manipulative. Like Grandma Nita was like, can I have one of your chips? And she just went, no. And then she goes, Mama, you want one of my chips? And I was like, proud of her a little bit. I was like, that is diabolical. But I can't tell you how many times I've like told stories like that on the playground and just like weirded out another mom. So it's interesting, like it helps, humor helps like in the situation and oftentimes on stage, but in the places where you think it would help, sometimes you're just taking a giant swing and missing in a crazy way. Because I can't tell you how many moms I've just like totally weirded out by oversharing.
But I think what the two of you are pointing out is something sometimes we have a hard time doing with our kids is allowing ourselves to find something they're doing to be humorous, right? Like we can so often go to like, that's wrong, that's bad behavior, right? But like my youngest is like 0% people pleasing, 0. I don't know if any of you have kids like that. You're like, I'm mad at you. He's like, that sounds like your problem, you know? And I was like, oh, that doesn't work with you, okay. And there was a moment, he was young, he was probably 4, but every bathroom in our apartment just smelled like urine, like beyond a normal bathroom. And my husband and I were like, I just feel like our youngest kid is gonna know why. And we're like, why? Do you know why this has been happening the last number of days? And I kid you not, he goes, well, I just kind of thought it would be funny to pee in the trash cans and then empty it into the toilet. So that might be why. And of course I was like, well, could you stop doing that? And actually nonchalantly, he's like, sure, no problem, you know? And I think in this moment, we can go punish our kid. What's wrong? That is, like, I find that's a really funny thing, that you walk into the bathroom and you're like, hold on a second, I could pee in the trash instead. And to allow yourself to actually just experience even just a moment of like joy around the creativity and the fact that actually he wasn't even telling anyone. He was just finding it funny himself. It stops that instinct that I think so many of us had from our parents. It's just the instinct right away of like bad punishment. And so many of the things we want for our kids when they're older comes from creativity and thinking outside the box. And that doesn't always mean your kid has to pee in a trash can, but the fact that he did meant truly, I'm seeing something different. I see humor in a situation. I actually believe we can channel that in kids way more than we can create that if it's been shut down in kids. And so just a little moment, and you both demonstrated of like, oh, it's kind of funny. And then you can do your parent thing. I think really shifts things.
Mm-hmm. Do your kids find you funny?
Wow.
You know, I was thinking about this. I don't know if I don't. My kids think adults are funny. I don't think she knows yet that her father's a comedic genius. But she knows it's important to me because she was saying like I was ugly or stupid or something. I said, hey, you're going to insult me. Like, do something that I really care about. and she said, like, say you're not funny. And I go, oh, now go to your room. You're grounded or whatever. But that's a very, she's 5. I wonder when we really start to know is a funny person or not. I don't know.
Yeah. I think my daughter finds both me and my husband funny. I mean, both of us are comics. And she does, she also knows that we compete against each other to be funny. Right. So sometimes if one of us is doing a bit and, like being the monster or being whatever, and she'll laugh at that person, and then when the other person tries to, jump in, she'll go, no, Dada's doing it, And so I think she gets it, and she thinks we're funny, but she's like, one at a time, please.
I'm always curious about this sense of when kids find their parents funny, because we do as parents have this sense of like, am I allowed to try to be funny? Am I supposed to be this authority figure? Am I supposed to be this person who is this bulwark of discipline and correctness? I mean, that is a version of parenting that I think used to exist, and I'm grateful is not quite that black and white anymore, but I do think it is this tension that gets back to the mental health question of it, which is like, how much of this is my responsibility? How much of this am I leading them toward a specific thing versus like I am allowed to just be sort of in on this joke with you? It's hard.
Yeah. I do ask my 5-year-old often something that I stole from my mom, who's here tonight. Shout out Jan. That I ask her in bed, what is something that you laughed at today? And it's become a fun exercise for her to identify humor in her life, which as a comic is very important. That's kind of our whole job. But I also enjoy what she finds funny hearing because it really tells me a lot about her personality.
I don't know if I'm answering the question, but I do feel like there's one of the things that's difficult about parenting now is there used to be like a general understanding of what was right and what was wrong in parenting. Like you would have, and that is one thing that I am jealous of about our parents, is that they just had a general understanding of what you do and what you don't do. And now there's like a bunch of schools of parenting and like styles and and that really confuses me. So I tend to just go, all right, if it feels right, I'm gonna do it. Because the only thing that I can really depend on is my own intuition. Which sometimes I think leads me the right way, and sometimes I might mess up, but we'll fix it later, or she'll hate me. I don't know.
I mean, I think when you say parents being funny, I just think about having fun with your parents. Having fun with someone in your life, I think everyone here, that's an important part of every relationship. And I often think about parents in a household, they kind of are the CEOs, right? So if you think about anywhere you work, does it undermine someone's leadership or your manager's leadership if you have fun with them? I don't know if anyone would say that. I think actually having a fun conversation, doing something off-site together that, you're taking a hike, whatever it is, it feels fun. It makes you feel more connected to that person. When you feel more connected, you're more willing to cooperate with that person. You want to do hard things with that person, right? And so I think having fun between a parent and a kid is a really, really critical part of an effective kind of parent-child relationship. And that comes more easily to some people than others. And if it doesn't come easily to someone in this room, playing feels really hard and my kid wants me to dress up, whatever it is, usually the number one reason why it's hard for us to play with our kids is that no adult played with us. Like, and if you think back to your childhood, like, did someone play board games? Did someone paint my nails and do dress up? Did someone do make believe? Did someone play hide and seek? And again, if it's not about blaming our parents, if they didn't, probably no one did it with them, right? It doesn't have to be anyone's fault. But it can be a little relieving to know, oh, that's why it feels hard and awkward. And that still means I can take steps. And fun can be a muscle and a skill that you build just like reading, right? It doesn't come naturally. It doesn't feel easy at first, but it is possible to build it as a new muscle.
We've had guests in our house that don't know how to play with our kids. And I always just say, get on the floor. If you get on the floor, you're gonna start playing. And that's our family strategy. Get on the floor.
That's great. I love that.
Can I ask a question, just in the audience? Not everyone has a kid, but everyone was a kid. This is always true. Raise your hand if your parent played with you when you were a kid. So a lot, but also a lot who didn't. And so it's about 50-50, which, like, whichever camp you're in, just know, like, you're not alone. And I always say, like, our past helps us understand what feels natural today, but it's not prison. It's not our destiny. But that information just makes sense of, oh, that's why this feels awkward. I'm kind of the first dad or mom of my whole lineage to get on the floor with my kid. That's actually, I give myself a lot of credit for my willingness to do that.
Yeah.
Something I think about a lot, I write about parenting and occasionally write about my own kids. And I love reading other people's parenting things. I like reading about their kids. I love hearing stand-up about parenting and other people's kids. And I am always trying to gauge for myself what is okay to share and what do I need to keep protected, what do I need to keep private. And I think it's a conversation about comedy because that is a thing all comics negotiate whenever you're joking about your mom or your wife or whatever. But it is really a question about mental health because so much of the question of stigma is the things we don't share. So how you balance this question of, like, am I sharing a hard thing and then I am creating this relatable space for my audience, this thing that is embarrassing that nobody wants to talk about? Or am I like, do I need to keep this thing private for my kid? I am literally asking all of you because I don't know, and I am perpetually trying to figure out the answer to this question.
I feel like as a mom comic, not in that I do like momedy, but
wow, I'd like to unpack that.
Just a really terrible term that I heard once. But as a mother who's a comic, I get caught on that a lot because I'll ask myself, I'll be like, well, would a man talk about it on stage? And if they did, like, am I gonna get more criticism talking about this than a guy who's a comic and a dad? And oftentimes the answer is yes, and that will make me do it. Because why not? You know what I mean? But then there's also jokes where, and I can tell this over a period of time usually, while I'm telling the joke, if there's a part of me that feels like, I don't want her to feel this, or I don't want her to feel embarrassment about this, that's where I'll go, all right, I don't want this joke, or I'll change the joke so that it protects her. But generally speaking, it's between those two things, between both protecting her and also pushing it a little bit so that I can say the same jokes that a guy would, you know?
I am terrified to show my kids' faces on social media. I do not do that. I think that scares me, that people post pictures of kids on the internet for everyone to see. I try not to use their names, but if they say something stupid, it's happening. It's happening in the act. I think that's all fair game. I would never purposely hurt them. We had a birthday party at our house, and there was a very funny incident that happened. And I was starting to share it on stage. It was about another kid at the party, and I stopped that because I was like, this is someone else's kid. I can't talk about that. But my own children, I don't know. There's a nice part of me that says, hey, I would never purposely try to hurt you. Dad needs to pay the bills a little bit. Comedy's how we do it.
No,
Shut up and eat.
That's real also. I mean, it is part of the reality of the business. Of, like, people come to you for that. I mean, it's very true for you, right? And so I'm curious how you think about it.
I think actually pretty similar. I don't talk about my kids' names. I've never shown them online. And definitely when I started my account, that was a lot of what I was hearing. You're going to have to do that, like, in this field. And I think it sounds like each of us here just has some line where, like, I know myself in some way, and that's the thing that's going to guide, what I put out there. And then the stories, yeah, either they're generalized, they're anonymized, or yeah, it's kind of shared with the idea that I actually think this is a story of every child, right? And so I think it's a dance. I haven't gotten it exactly right, but I have certain areas of no-go, and the rest of it, I'm just trying to still figure out. And definitely as my kids get older,
Yes.
you know, like my oldest has friends who are on Instagram. He's not. But I'm aware of that. Like I'll see them pop onto my IG live and I'm like, hello, I think you should be in class right now, you know? But I think it gets probably even trickier as our kids get older.
Yeah, I have thought about that a lot also as my kids have gotten, like, I think for any parent, there's this sense of where is the line between my experience and their experience?
Yes.
And when they're little, it's sort of like they don't really have an experience. I'm sorry, you're mostly a potato. And like, this is mostly, this is my experience, right? But there is some line that happens, and I'm not always sure where it is. It's a hard thing to find.
I will definitely be adjusting that as they get older, for sure. Yeah. For sure. I mean, I even have trying to be more cognizant of what topics I talk about because I don't want that, you know. So yeah, but yes, that will be ever evolving, and I think every great comic has to decide how much they evolve and progress over time with their material.
Dr. Becky, I was asking some parent friends of mine about whether they had questions to ask you that had relating to parenting and comedy. And somebody who I work with had a question that I often am unsure about, and it is to do with teasing, which I think has this real sense of like, it is a sense of humor, and like kids need to learn how to take a joke, and parents tease their kids, or grandparents will be teasing their kids, and who is the butt of the joke, and how do you deal, like it is a question that I also struggle with, and I am curious if you've had any thoughts about teasing.
Yeah, I mean, I think the kind of phrase that you said, like kids need to learn how to take these things, I just don't want to conflate that with something else we're noticing that I think is important, which is I feel like a lot of parents feel like there's some fragility trend amongst children that they don't want to be part of. I just think it's important to separate that. Like the way that you can raise resilient, anti-fragile kids doesn't have to do with teasing. Like we can do that in a lot of other ways, and I'm totally on board for that. I think teasing is tricky, and I think, you know, there's a lot of people who grew up in households where there was a lot of teasing, but they felt like that's really never what it felt like to me. It just felt bad. It felt like names that I would never want to be called, and then it was all done, oh, it's just a joke, it's in jest, and it felt like a lack of accountability. You kind of know what you're doing based on how it impacts someone else. And if it's someone you really love, someone in your family, and they kind of are telling you this doesn't feel good, naming it as teasing, the word of teasing isn't more powerful than their experience of saying, I don't like that. And so I think sometimes we take like safe haven in that term, and I'm not a fan of that. I think it's important in our house, you know, our kids are gonna argue. Our kids are gonna, you know, wrestle each other sometime, but there shouldn't be anything that feels dangerous. Your home should feel safe, and we need to intervene when there is, whether that's verbal or physical kind of aggression. Now, again, I think over here is a whole different camp of things, which is, can we just make sure our kids learn resilience so they can tolerate when things don't go their way? I would say 100% of my time at Good Inside is an approach that does that. I think we can carve teasing out of it, and it doesn't have to be part of that.
Yeah, I kind of feel similarly. She's going to have two parents that talk about her and talk about each other, and obviously my husband and I tease each other all the time. But Michael's laughing because he knows
well,
us.
comics are incredibly mean to each other, and it's wonderful to be a part of.
Yeah, and it's how we show love, but
I think this is what some parents say about teasing, right? This is how I show love to my kids.
Well, I grew up in a house that is exactly what Dr. Becky was talking about, where it was a lot of teasing, but it didn't feel that way. And did it lead me to literally try to make money from teasing? It did. So there is a resilience to it. But I still don't want my kid to grow up in a house that does it too much. So we try to, like, if there is teasing, it's not mean. It's never a mean kind of there's different kinds of teasing, and I think some of it can be really mean, and some of it can be just sort of goofy and silly. And if it's silly, it feels safe. If it's mean, it generally we can tell from her reaction to it. So I try to take it like on a case-by-case basis, and hopefully she ends up not a comedian.
It's fun to watch all of us try to define teasing and comedy, because the age-old definition of comedy is you say the thing, and if they laugh, it was comedy. But if you say it and they don't laugh, it wasn't comedy. So we like to tease, but man, we're going to make a mistake going too far. That's the worst. I grew up in a house, youngest of 4 kids. Maybe that's why I'm
the oldest of 5.
Holy shit, look at us. So teasing is a big way of how we said I love you in our family. I'm not saying that's what every family should do, but this is an interesting conversation that I have to continue to explore. And thanks to Project Healthy Minds, I will.
Everyone saw the rainbow go over, right? I could feel it. I could feel it happening. As we get to the end of this conversation, though, I did want to ask all of you how I think one of the things that we all encounter as parents is this sense of like, I am trying to keep this other person alive. I am not taking particularly good care of myself. And I am curious what you guys do for yourselves to help protect your own mental health, where the lines are, what are the things that are important to you to make sure that you are a resilient parent so that you can show up for your kids.
Again, I have a toddler, so right now all I can manage is going to therapy and getting hair extensions. That's it.
You could save some time if your therapist
I
did
wish.
hair extensions.
I wish. He's an Italian guy in Brooklyn, but not that they can't, you know. Anyway, you guys get it.
This is it's hard. You gotta creating a boundary for yourself is sometimes easier than enforcing the boundary within your family. I think my wife and I at this point have developed nice, like, hey, I need an hour Saturday to do this thing, or I need, like, for us, it's a lot of working out. I always feel better when I do some form of exercise. It helps me so much, not just physically, but that time of action with my body. This sounds funny, but like it just really recenters me. So we've learned to ask for that for each other, but then we've also had to learn to give that. It's easy to ask if the other person's like, hey, I hear you, and it's not happening. That doesn't work. So that's what we've learned, but it's always evolving.
Yeah, my husband is just, he just made me, my husband's running a marathon right now.
Literally right now?
God.
Yeah, well, he's like, he's started training for marathons, and I'm like, oh, well, yeah, you've got the time, you know? So it's like trying to just manage, like, sarcastic comments like that, where it's like, I'll just sort of jab him for doing something that's really good for him. I have to take more time for myself. That is a sign that I'm not doing enough for myself. So whenever I start doing like sarcastic jabs at my husband for doing something that makes him feel good, that's where I'm like, okay, maybe another session.
But what a great observation. You know about yourself.
Yeah.
That's awesome you know that.
Well, I am in therapy.
There we go.
Yeah.
Well, I think what you're saying, actually, and it is such a good sign, is when we see resentment as actually a feeling we have when we didn't speak up for our needs early enough and loud enough, we kind of change how we start to think about resentment and what we do with it, right? Because instead of focusing on who we're resentful of, we're like, oh, what is my body trying to tell me I need, and how can I get that need met? I think to me, especially in parenting, it actually all starts with just a mindset that kids don't need selfless martyrs. That's an old view of parenting. It's a horrible view. It's kind of like a pilot on your plane telling you they've flown for 3 straight weeks and haven't taken off a day of rest. And you're like, well, I'm going to get off this plane because I don't feel very safe. And they mandate rest for pilots, right? Like they time out. And if you think about parenting that way, we have to carve out time for ourselves. I think my best hack is I take my calendar very seriously for self-care. Like if I have my kid's soccer game or a meeting at work on my calendar, I go. And I think before we have kids, like the time to work out, you find it. After you have kids, if you did not put that on your calendar a week in advance, it is never there. And I think that's hard for people who like to be a little more laissez-faire. It's like a loss of like, oh, shoot. But it just doesn't work. So putting it on your calendar as an uncancelable appointment, and it might look silly because it says take a walk around the block without my kids for 20 minutes. And you're like, why am I putting that on my calendar? Put it on your calendar. And it is as important as your OB appointment or your primary care physician or whatever else you're doing, and put it in advance. Like don't even start if that's hard this week. Start next week when there is time. And then when someone says, can you come to this meeting? You'll see, and you have to say, I am not available. I need to do something at a different time. And so I think calendaring in small things for yourself, I think in my parenthood journey has been the most important thing.
Yeah.
I want to thank you all so much for being here. I want to thank everyone for joining us. Please put your hands together for our guests.
Thanks, everybody, for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kathryn. Excellent job. Thank you.